Hey all, it's Jason from GameRave.com, otherwise known as Danger Boy, and we're back with GameRaveTV. It's another reader suggestion episode. This week's episode is about top 5 things, and rather than go the whole usual top 5 rare, top 5, blah 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 all time, yada yada. One of the reasons we started doing the YouTube episodes was to bring to light games you guys might not have ever noticed before on top of the usual variants and stuff like that. So with this video, we decided to have some fun filters, and this week's top 5 video is about the top 5 US exclusive Saturn games not published by Sega. And there's 3 rules. 1, Sega cannot have published it. 2, it cannot be on the US PlayStation. It has to only be on the Sega Saturn. And 3, you have to forgive me for number 1, and we'll get to that when we get there. That said, let's start. Alright, number 5 is Crime Wave from IDOS, and if you've ever played Micro Machines or Twisted Metal, imagine you combine the two of them into one game. It's actually fairly adorable. It's an overhead, top-down view driving shooting game where basically you're playing a futuristic cop car that just has to destroy all the other bad guy cars. What makes the game fun is that it's actually a somewhat open world, and I use that term sort of loosely, that you can actually choose 8 different open world areas and different cars, etc. Aside from the weird loading times the game has while you're driving to try and keep everything in play, it's actually fairly adorable, and it's not that hard to come by. Definitely check it out. Number 4, Lunacy by Atlas. If you guys have ever played D or Enemy Zero on the Saturn, or D on the PlayStation, this is actually right up your alley. It's a really cool FMV video game where everything is pre-rendered and on a track. So like if you want to press forward, you're actually just watching a film clip play forward, and then you have to turn left to right, etc. Just like how D was. The difference is where D you had to beat the game in 2 hours or less. With Lunacy, you can actually relax and play at your own pace and so forth. You're actually a person who wakes up in this town with a symbol on his forehead, and he doesn't have any memory of why he got there. And as you're playing it, you find out that it's all about wishes and the dangers of making those wishes come true. Very cool game. Can be kind of hard to come by, if not kind of expensive, just because it's one of the rare, more in-demand titles for like Saturn collectors, but if you have the chance to, definitely check it out. Just forgive the horrible acting on it. Alright, number 3, Galactic Attack. Now, Galactic Attack is an awesome 2D vertical scrolling spaceship shooting game that is near and dear to my heart because it's actually part of the Ray Storm series. If you guys are on PlayStation playing shmups or shoot 'em ups, you know about Ray Crisis and Ray Storm. Well, Galactic Attack is actually the renamed Layer Section, which was actually the renamed Ray Force from Japan. It's actually the first game to be released in the series. It's just really cool, typical spaceship shooting game, but what's nice is it has the lock-on feature with your B-button missile, where you could actually highlight things in the background and fire on those with your missiles while you're taking care of the normal enemies with your normal guns. Just really nice 2D graphics, huge bosses, just all around really good game, and like I said, if you love the Ray Crisis and Ray Storm, you owe it to yourself to pick this game up. Number 2 is the Night Warriors, otherwise known as Darkstalkers 2 by Capcom. Now, Night Warriors is an interesting release only because of the crazy relationship Capcom had with the PlayStation and the Saturn. PlayStation got the first Darkstalkers through Psygnosis programming it for them, and then Saturn got Night Warriors exclusively, and then when the Saturn folded, Darkstalkers 3 ended up being on PlayStation 1. So this whole crisscross, rule of the ownership, kind of like how Mortal Kombat happened with 2 and 3. If you guys have never played any of the Darkstalkers or Night Warriors games, it is just this amazing, amazing, beautifully animated 2D fighting game with your typical Street Fighter moves and motion controls, like quarter circle, 360 degrees, etc. What makes the game fun to play is just the absolute amount of animation in the characters and all like how exaggerated they are and all the different things they can do. Just a really, really beautiful, colorful game that pretty much shows off what the Saturn was capable of doing in its early lifetime. And now, number 1. Alright guys, now, our number 1 top US Saturn exclusive is actually everything Working Designs ever did. Now, the reason I asked for forgiveness when I first was describing the episode is because with the exception of Iron Storm, which I don't know for sure, everything else Working Designs ever released was actually a Sega game in Japan. Sega of Japan made the game and published it, and then Working Designs brought it over here. Now, you may be asking yourself, well, Jason, why would Sega of America leave all these role-playing games behind for someone else to do? And that problem stems from this guy, he who shall not be named. Screw it. Jackass's name is Bernie Stolar. Bernie Stolar had an interesting relationship with gaming, and he was with Sony when this PlayStation 1 was first coming out, and pretty much stated that RPGs were too geeky and too nerdy and had no place in the coming PlayStation era of gaming. And he was also one of the few people that didn't care for 2D games, which would explain why the original PlayStation 1 was so 3D heavy and nothing vintage looking came over with it. He later moved on to Sega and brought those same policies with him, and that ended up creating a whole lot of problems. In fact, he basically single-handedly killed the Saturn. Now, the reason I bring up Stolar is because history does nothing if not repeat itself. And the going joke is that about every 20 years is when history repeats itself, like fashion, movies, etc. And his unwillingness to bring RPGs to his system in his time frame before he left would have been a disastrous picture. And I'll explain that like this. After Stolar left, the PlayStation 1 enjoyed the most golden era of RPGs ever in the history of gaming. Final Fantasies, Dragon Quests, Valkyrie Profile, even Beyond the Beyond to a degree. But all these RPGs, when Square and Enix were actual rivals and not the same company, and all these third-party developers like Tri-Ace and and Camelot were just unleashing all these gorgeous RPGs. I mean, Final Fantasy VII single-handedly just destroyed the entire competition for Sony. That was all said, and there's no way to even argue that. And I bring that up because in 2015, it will be the 20th anniversary of PlayStation 1, my baby, and history is repeating itself. For those of you that watched E3, let me use this as the example. Switch out the word RPG with indie publisher. Microsoft, who in our analogy would basically be Bernie Stolar, has been very, very unfriendly to the indie developers, and it's been, displayed. There was like almost no showing at E3 for them. Multiple devs have been complaining about them behind the scenes on different blog sites and so forth. Now, Sony, on the other hand, gave them E3 stage. I've never seen so many indie devs on one stage during a major E-Press conference ever. That was amazing. And those indie publishers are going to be this generation's RPG. It will be a golden era for the small-time publisher. And that's important. And that's going to help decide who's going to have the winning system. And, Microsoft might have had last gen wrapped up pretty well until the last few months, but I think Sony's time is coming again, and it's a really good time to be a PlayStation fan. So, 20 years from now, when someone is doing the PlayStation 4 Rave website, YouTube video, and discussing all these indie exclusives for the PlayStation 4 that Microsoft never got, it just is a huge, huge reminder that exclusives do count. And in doing this video, with removing Sega as a publisher, it was amazing how fast that list of available games just shrunk. I mean, for God's sakes, I think I had 4 left, and there was no way Corpse Killer was getting on this list. No. So, something to think about is, as November, December comes, and you guys are going to be plunking down between $400 to $500 for that system, exclusives do matter more than just the first-party ones, unless you're Nintendo. So, when you're going to play that new game system, just make sure you take a look at all the third-party exclusives, because that's where the money is. Take care, you guys. We'll see you next week.